والسلام على من لا نبي بعد نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اقتفى أثره واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, فإنشاءالlah we'll continue with reading from the book known as موسوعة التفسير المأثور, or the Tafsir, or the Encyclopedia of Transmitted Tafsir. And we are in Surah al-Masad, where Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبت يدا أبي لهب تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة الحطب في جيدها حبل من مسد. And we've reached the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal where He says, في جيدها في جيدها, i.e., let's look at what they say the explanation of this is. First off, I'll say, because they probably won't discuss this point of the tafsir, and that is that the words in Arabic are three categories. The words in Arabic are three categories. The first of them are what are known as asma, or an ism. And an ism in Arabic is what has its own meaning and is not restricted by time. Meaning the word has a meaning that is inherent. It is fixed inside of it. Its meaning is not derived from outward factors, but the meaning of it is what it is. And that meaning is not restricted or in connection to any given time frame. Like, for example, when I say yed, then the word yed means yed. That's what it means. It has its own meaning. If I say julus or jalis, then the word jalis means alladhi jalasa, right? The al-jalis. It has its own meaning and it is not restricted by time. So it doesn't mean past, present, or future. That type of word is called an ism. The second type of word in Arabic, when we talk about the parts of speech, right? In English, we know we have nouns, pronouns, nouns, adjectives, adverbs, right? Verbs, particles, and things like this. The second type of word in Arabic is a fi'l, a fi'l. And a fi'l in Arabic is a word that has its own meaning, but that meaning is restricted by one of the three time periods: past or madi, present or hal, and future, yani amr. And or mustaqbal, but we say it's the amr. So how does that work? When we have a word that has its own meaning, but that meaning is restricted by time. So for example, the word jalasa, it has the meaning of to sit. But depending on how I say that word, the meaning will be altered by time. So to sit in the past is jalasa. He sat in the past. While in the present, it would be yajlisu. He is sitting currently. And the future would be like if I were to tell somebody ijlis, or sit, i.e. the command, I want you to sit. And that action of theirs, sitting, would occur in the future, i.e. after I say my statement. So you have this word to sit. In the past would be sat, jalasa. In the current or the present, it would be ijlisu, sitting. And it would in the future be ijlis, sit. And so like this is a fi'l, a word that has its own meaning but is restricted by time. The third part of speech in Arabic, which is the most difficult to really be, or is the most difficult to gain expertise in, is what is known as a harf ma'na, right? Or huruf al-ma'ani. The letters or the small words that give or benefit a meaning. They have a meaning. but that meaning is not inherent in itself. That meaning is derived based on the context and the way that the word is used. So those meanings are often, especially when you talk about huruf al-jar, are often interchangeable. And so, for example, we might learn a word like fee. And the word fee in English, we might see it translated as in, but we might also see it translated as on. And we might also see it translated as because of. And this word fee means all of those things. How do I know what meaning the word is trying to benefit or what meaning is trying to be conveyed? It's based on the context and the way that the word is used and what it is in conjunction with. So sometimes the word fee can mean in, right? For example, I could say, Laysa fil bayt illa rajul. There's only one man in the house, meaning the house is a location that surrounds and includes and encompasses this one man. So you would say in. Or, for example, Allah says in the Quran, أَفَلَا يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Don't they travel fi the earth? And here, traveling in the earth doesn't mean to go inside of it. It means to travel on the earth or through the earth, right? On top of it. Like Allah says, لَأُصَلِّبَنَّكُمْ فِي جُذُوءِ النَّخْلِ. I will crucify you fi tree trunks. It doesn't mean in tree trunks. It means on top of tree trunks. And then likewise, you could say fi like ثَلَاثَ كَذِبَاتٍ فِي جَنْبِ اللَّهِ, right? 3 lies fi the jamb of Allah, i.e. 3 lies because of the sake of Allah, right? Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he told those 3 statements because of the sake of Allah. And so like this, these huruf al-ma'ani, their meaning is derived from other than them. All of that to introduce this ayat that we have in front of us, fi jeidiha. And although the word in Arabic means fi, or although the word in Arabic fi could mean in, it can also mean on. And so here we have on her jeed. And so we have this meaning on her jeed. So the question becomes, what is a jeed when we say fi jeidiha? And so the Tafsir is now explaining this word, jeidiha. So they say, أن قتادة بن دعامة في جيدها قال عنقها. In her jeed or on her jeed, i.e. it means on her neck. So this word jeed, it means neck. It's another word, an uncommon way of saying it, but it means neck. Fi jeidiha, i.e. on her neck. Likewise, Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, he says, fi jeidiha, fi unuqiha, yawm al-qiyamah. Right? Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, he said the meaning of fi jeidiha, it means fi unuqiha, in her neck or on her neck on the day of judgment. Right? She will have around her neck or on her neck, in her neck, right? On the day of judgment. قال عبد الرحمن بن زيد بن أسلم من طريق بن وهب في قول الله في جيدها حبل قال رقبتها, يعني في رقبتها. He says that Abdul Rahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam, from the pathway of Ibn Wahab, he said regarding the statement of Allah Ta'ala, في جيدها حبل, on her neck will be a rope, i.e. fi raqabatiha, on her neck, right, the base of her neck. Fi raqabatiha hablun, there will be a rope around her neck, as was mentioned by Muqatil, yani yawm al-qiyamah. In this statement by Abdul Rahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam, fi jidiha, yani fi raqabatiha, around her neck. Now, so that's the first half of that ayat, fi jidiha. right? So we know the word jeed, it means neck. They go on, they say, fi جيدها حبل من مسد, a rope of masad. And so we need to know what is al-Masad, and which is the word where this surah derived its name from, Surah al-Masad. So what is Masad? They say, and Abdurrahman ibn Abbas, I'm sorry, and Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma من طريق الأوفي في قوله حبل من مسد قال هي حبال تكون بمكة يقال المسد العصا التي تكون في البكرة وفي البكرة يقال المسد قلادة لها من ودع. نعم. So Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that al-Masad is a type of rope that used to be in Mecca. It's a type of rope that they used to use in Mecca. He says it is named Masad. And it is also al-Masad is a asa. It's a staff or a stick. التي تكون في البركة أو البكرة. It is an asa that would be in a bakra. And a bakra is a camel, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just trying to see, do they have another usage for the word? Like the Sahabi who was named Abu Bakra and Abi Bakr. It might also be a well, if I'm not mistaken. A bakra might be a well. That's why I'm looking. والبكرة بمنزلة الفتى. That's a bikr. والأنثى بكرة. بكرة أي طاء أي شابة طويلة. بكرة والجماع بكار. I think it might be a well, if I'm not mistaken. نعم. والبكرة في الحقيقة وهي التي يستسقى عليها الماء العذب. Right? هذه كلمة العرب يريد بها كثرة وتوفير العدد وأنهم جاءوا جميعا. وقال أبو عبيدة معناه جاءوا بعضهم في إثر بعض وليس هناك بكرة في الحقيقة وهي التي يستسقى عليه الماء العذب. البكرة التي يستسقى عليه الماء العذب. So like al-Bakra is like the stick or the thing that you use to lift the pail down into the well, or the bucket down into the well. That is a bakra. And so the word mesed is a type of rope that they used to use as this bakra, right? This type of rope that they used to use in Mecca to lower the buckets down into the well. And it's a hard rope, a strong rope. And that's where he uses the word asa, right? The rope is so strong and hard, it's reminiscent of a stick. And so when you think about this and you're visualizing this, fi جيدها حبل من مسد, she'll have a rope made out of this hard stick-like rope. And it's the strong type of rope that they would wrap around the bucket as they would lower it down into the well. So it would have to be a strong rope that can handle the weight of the bucket full of water to not break, to not fray, to not snap. And so she's going to have wrapped around her neck this mesed. And so that's what Ibn Abbas is saying. He's saying it was a rope that they used to use in Mecca. It was called al-Masad. And it's a type of rope or a stick that they would use in the buckets for the well. Yuqalu al-Masad. They used to name it Masad, and it is like a necklace, right? Another word that they would use for the word Masad, another meaning that they would have, right? So from the meanings of the word al-Masad was this rope that they would use to wrap around the bucket to lower it into the well. Another word that they would express using this word al-Masad would be a qilada laha min wada'. It would be a necklace. She will have a necklace from wada'. And wada', They mention it in the footnotes. They do not mention the definition of wada', so we need to see what does that word wada' mean. She will have a necklace made of wada'. He says, al-wad' wal-wada'ah wal-wada'at manaqifu sigar تخرج من البحر تزين بها أثاقيل وهي خرز بيض جوف في بطونها شق كالشق النواة. Seashell. Al-wada' would be a seashell. And let's confirm. Yeah, seashell. It's a new word for me. Wada'. Now, so another word that they would use to express this word mesed, right? What else could this word mesed mean beside this strong stick-like rope that they would wrap around a bucket to dip into the well? They would also use the word mesed for a necklace of seashells, right? So when they would make a necklace or a rope, because that's what a rope is, just a necklace, a string or twined materials. When they would use that and make a rope or a necklace of seashells, they would call that a mesed. So these are two of the meanings of the word mesed as mentioned by Ibn Abbas. Another narration, they say, قال ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما حبل من مسد سلسلة من حديد ضرعها 70 ذراعا تدخل فيها وتخرج من دبرها ويكون سائرها في عنقها. نعم. Ibn Abbas, so if these are the meanings of the linguistical meaning of the word al-Masad, then is the Masad of the wife of Abu Lahab, Jamil, is it going to be like these Masad or these this Masad that we know in the dunya? Ibn Abbas, he explains, he says, Hablun min Masad, he says, a chain made of iron. So this Masad that will be wrapped around her neck will be one of iron. So it will be like an iron rope. ضرعها 70 ذراع. The length of it is 70 cubits. And a cubit, a dhira', classically was from the tip of the finger, the tip of the index, or the middle finger, to the elbow. That distance they would call a cubit. And so this rope that will be wrapped around her neck, it will be a distance or a length of 70 dhira', 70 cubits. Like Allah mentions in the Quran in Surah al-Haqqah, خُذُوهُ فَغُلُّوهُ, right? Take him and then fetter him in chains. ثُمَّ الْجَحِيمَ صَلُّوا, right? فِي سِلْسِلَةٍ ضَرْعُهَا 70 ذِرَاعًا, and a chain that its length is 70 cubits. So Ibn Abbas is saying that this mesed that she will be enchained or fettered in will be 70 cubits. And it will be, as we mentioned, made of iron. He says it will be entered into her via her mouth. So the rope will be entered into her via her mouth, and it will be extracted out of her anus. So like this, the rope will be forced through her intestines and through her insides. And then the excess amount of rope. So if you imagine, wa'yadhu billah, right, her being tortured in the hellfire and being chained and bound, how will she be chained and bound? The rope that she is going to be wrapped in will be forced into her via her mouth, and it will be clamping on her by coming out of her anus and clamping her that way. So instead of it being just wrapped around her neck and her hanging like that, it will be forced through her body and grabbing her from her insides, fettering her and chaining her up that way. And then he says, and then the excess rope will be made to hang around her neck. Ya'adhu billah. So like this is what Ibn Abbas says about this method, that it is a iron chain that is 70 cubits long. It will be entered into her via her mouth and basically extracted via her anus. And so that's how it's holding her, right? So it's like hanging from a hook or like a rope or a chain where it's coming in through her mouth and out through her anus and catching her like that, suspending her like that. And then the excess amount, she'll be having that wrapped around her neck. Now, that's the statement of Ibn Abbas. They say, قال سعيد بن المسيب حبل من مسد كانت لها قلادة في عنقها فاخرة فقالت لأنفقنها في عداوة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Right, if we remember the word al-Masad from the first definition of Ibn Abbas, he mentioned that the Masad is that rope, that strong rope, stick-like rope that is used around the bakra, the pail that is dipped into the well, or it could be a necklace of seashells, right? He said that she had a necklace of seashells that used to be called al-Masad. Sa'id ibn Musayyib is explaining more on that. He says, Fi جيدها حبل من مسد. Right? It's not talking about necessarily the day of judgment. It's talking about this life and some of her quality. He said that Sa'id ibn Musayyib said on her neck is a rope of Masad. He said she used to have a necklace around her neck that was very expensive, a priceless necklace, right? And a valuable necklace. And she said about her necklace, لَأُنْفِقَنَّهَا فِي عَدَاوَةِ مُحَمَّدٍ. I am going to spend the value of it, right? I'm going to sell it, get the money, and spend all of it in enmity towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the message that's being referred to according to this tafsir is the necklace that she had when she was alive. And like this, the compensation matches the crime. When she was going to use this necklace to be an enemy to Allah and his messenger, Allah is going to punish her with a necklace on the day of judgment made out of this iron rope that Ibn Abbas mentioned in the previous narration. وَيَعْذُ بِاللَّهِ. They mention in the footnotes on Ibn Kathir, they say that وَوَجَّهَ Ibn Kathir قول سعيد بن المسيب بقوله يعني فأعقبها الله بها حبلا من في جيدها من مسد النار. Ibn Kathir, he says something, he says, so the statement, talking about, commenting on the statement of Sa'id ibn Musayyib, he said after it, i.e., Allah will punish her because of that, i.e., because of her wanting to spend the value of this necklace that she had in enmity towards Allah and his messenger. Allah will punish her because of that with a rope that will be made around her neck, made out of the hellfire, made out of the Masad, or the seashells, or the rocks, the stones of the hellfire. Wa'yadhu billah. Right, so this is some of the meaning of the word Masad, right? Whether it's this strong, hard, coarse rope where Ibn Abbas said it's made out of iron, or whether it's the necklace that she had when she was alive, made out of seashells, that she said she was going to use it to be an enemy to the messenger, spend its value to be an enemy to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is from the meaning of al-Masad. They mention some more. They say, "An Urwa ibn Zubair, an Urwa ibn Zubair, min tariq Yazid, fi جيدها حبل من مسد, قال سلسلة من حديد في نار, أو في النار, ضرعها 70 ذراعا." And like this definition, it helps you to understand a little bit more, right? When you visualize these things, Allah is mentioning with such vivid description, so you can understand the reality to the best of your ability in this dunya. Urwa ibn Zubair, he said, as is mentioned from the pathway of Yazid, He said, Fi jidiha hablum min masad, around her neck there will be a rope of masad. He said it will be a chain of iron in the fire. And those two things, they add another level to the understanding. So like when we think about the statement of Ibn Abbas, the chain of iron that will be entered into her mouth and taken out through her anus, like hooking her that way and then wrapped around her neck. When you add to that the realization that this is all happening in the fire and how iron conducts heat and how it gets hot and molten and brands. So not only is she being tortured by the fact that it's a heavy iron chain that she's being hung on and hung from and wrapped in and bounded in, but in addition to that, the chain is more heat, on top of the heat of the hellfire, because the chain is getting hot and getting lit and getting, scalding and molted or melted so it can burn and brand her at the same time. So punishment on top of punishment. And Urwa ibn Zubair, he goes on, he says, and its length will be 70 dhira'a. Its length will be 70 cubits. Right? And we mentioned the ayat in Surah Al-Haqqa that kind of references that. They say, and Mujahid ibn Jabr, fi jidiha hablum min masad, qala min nar. On the authority of Mujahid ibn Jabr, he said, around her neck there will be a habl of masad. He said the word masad here means the fire. Right. Now, is that tafsir different than the previous ones? The reality is no, because all of this is happening in the hellfire. And if that chain, like we said, is made out of an iron of the hereafter, and that iron of the hereafter is not like the iron that you ponder now, but it will be ignited in the hellfire. So that chain will be of the hellfire as well. And so all of these realities are coming together. And so it's not a contradictory or an alternative tafsir. It's just everybody expressing it with slightly different vantage points or slightly different points of emphasis. They say, "An Mujahid ibn Jabr min tariq ibn Abi Najih fi jidiha hablum min masad qala mithla hadidatul bakrah." He says, on the authority of Mujahid ibn Jabr from the pathway of Ibn Abi Najih, regarding the statement of Allah, around her neck there will be a rope of masad. He said, and this masad is similar to the iron chains that they use for the bakrah, for the well buckets, right? So the same way you have those, like in our time, like think of those long chains that they use for anchors or for, casting things down into water that get wrapped up with the gears. Fi jidiha hablun. And not only is it hard iron, but it's heated up in the hellfire and it's forced through her inside and wrapped around her neck. They say, أنا الضحاك بن مزاحم من طريق عبيد في قوله تعالى في جيدها حبل من مسد قال حبل من شجر وهو الحبل الذي كانت تحتطب به. He says, on the authority of al-Dhahhak. Now, al-Dhahhak, he has a slightly different tafsir. He says, on the authority of al-Dhahhak from the pathway of Ubayd, regarding the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, in her neck or around her neck, there will be a habl of masad. He said the habl will be from like the tree variety, right? Like that of a tree, like the ropes, the twine, right? When we talk about twine and things like that, those type of ropes and branches that are turned in, like the branches when they're ripe and not ripe, but like wet and moist, and they're made into twine and binding materials. He said, so it's like the ropes made out of trees. And it is the same type of rope that she used to use when she would collect her wood, right? When she would go and do her job, as we mentioned, she was one who used to go and collect wood for burning. When she would go and gather the wood and wrap it up, that's the type of rope that she would use to bind it together and carry it around her neck. And so al-Dhahhak is saying that in the hellfire, she's going to have a rope made out of similar material i.e. in the hereafter, that will be used on her as a punishment, the same way that she used to have this rope around her neck in the dunya. They say, قال أبو المعتمر من طريق المعتمر بن سليمان. قال معتمر أبو المعتمر زعم محمد أن عكرمة قال في جيدها حبل من مسد أنه الحديدة التي في وسط البكرة. He says that Abu al-Mu'tamar said, as is mentioned by the pathway of al-Mu'tamar ibn Sulaiman, he said that Muhammad has claimed, yani this is the statement of Abu al-Mu'tamar, he's saying that Muhammad, in la'allahu az-Zuhri, I'm sorry, not az-Zuhri, ibn Sirin, la'allahu ibn Sirin, he's saying that Muhammad has claimed that Ikrimah has said around her neck there will be a habl of masad. Ikrimah said it's the same type of iron that is used, i.e. that is used to suspend the buckets in the middle of the bucket, right? That iron is usually placed on the middle of the bucket to bring it up and down, right? And so that's what Ikrimah said regarding it. They say, an Amir al-Sha'bi, hablun min masad, qala leaf. On the authority of Amir al-Sha'bi, he said she will have a habl of masad, i.e. of tree fiber, like the bark of trees and the twine that is used to bind things from the barks of trees. And a leaf, right? And you hear a word with it similar in English, leaf, like leaves of a tree, but it's not the leaves, it's like the fiber that is like the bark and like if you imagine a tree, when you cut it and you see like those strings, those fibers that are usually like pale, whitish, brownish color after you're stripping the bark or you're stripping it away, they call that leaf, right? And like the date palm trees have this, and you can use it to twine and make rope. And so Amir al-Sha'bi is saying that she's going to have a rope around her neck of masad, it's going to be made out of this substance. They say, قال الحسن البصري حبل من مسد المسد خيوط صفر وحمر. Here, Hasan al-Basri, he gives a statement. He says, حبل من مسد. He says the masad are those strands or those threads that are of yellow and red color. Right? So he gives us that the masad is that type of rope that they would use. And whatever material they might have been using back then, it would have been of yellow and red color. Like if we talk about those fibers from the tree, you'll see them a lot of times being yellow, or when they're like the bark and but they'll still be wet, they might even have a tendency of red in them. And it's not that he's saying all masad is like this, but it's just the way that he could explain it to the people who are around who had masad at that time. And so it's just meant to explain, those red and yellow ropes that we use, that's masad. That's basically what Hasan al-Basri is saying. Another narration, they say, قال حسن البصري حبل من مسد إنما كانت خرزات في عنقها. He said that, Hasan al-Basri said that on her neck there was a habl of masad. He said that around her neck there were shells or stones that she used to wear around her neck, right? Pebbles or shells that she used to wear around her neck. And so like we have to remember that from them are those who explain this ayah that the fi jidha hablun min masad is about how she used to act in the dunya. She used to have this necklace on in the dunya, while others explain it fi jidha hablun min masad as the compensation or the punishment that she's going to get in the hereafter. And there's a relationship or a connection between the two of them, because that necklace that she had was valuable and she wanted to use it to spend its value against Allah's messenger. And so, right, some of them will explain the ayat talking about how she was in the dunya, while others will explain the ayat talking about what she will get in the hereafter. But it's not contradictory, like we say, it's just each of them looking at it from a different aspect. Now, they say, أن قتادة بن دعامة من طريق معمر في جيدها حبل من مسد on the قال من الودع. He said on the authority of Qatadah ibn Di'ama from the pathway of Ma'mar, regarding the statement of Allah, fi جيدها حبل من مسد, he said there will be a rope or a necklace, a chain, a rope around her neck, or a chain around her neck made of shells, made of seashells. They say, and Ata حبل من مسد, المسد الحديدة التي تكون في البقرة. Ata, he mentions, he says, حبل من مسد. Al-Masad is the iron ropes or chains that will be in the buckets for the wells. And so you see all of these statements are all centering around the same phrases. And you can see the influence of the teachers from the Sahaba like Ibn Abbas, right? So you have somebody like Ibn Abbas who was the teacher of Mujahid, and who was the teacher of Al-Dhahak, and who was the teacher of Ata. And all of them have these similar statements. And then you see like the influence of somebody like Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib and on somebody like Hassan al-Basri or Amir al-Sha'bi. Ibn Abbas, the teacher of Urwa ibn Zubair, right? You see these repeating, the student repeating what the teacher mentioned. He says, كان محمد بن السائب الكلبي من طريق نافع بن يزيد يقول في جيدها حبل من مسد قال يقال الحبل الذي في الدلو قال ويقال المسد الحديد. On the authority of Muhammad ibn Sa'ib al-Kalbi, he used to say, as is mentioned by the pathway of Nafi ibn Yazid, Muhammad ibn Sa'ib al-Kalbi, he used to say, around her neck there will be a rope of mesed. He said that the mesed, it used to be said that it is the rope that is used for the well buckets, for the buckets that are used to extract water out of the well. He said, and it is also said that al-mesed is iron. And so this is going back linguistically. He's saying the word mesed is also representative of those iron rods. They say, قال مقاتل حبل من مسد من leaf, right? Muqatil, and La'alahu ibn Hayyan here, he said that حبل من مسد, what he means by that, he's saying what is meant by al-masad is those fibers of the tree. And they say, قال مقاتل ibn Sulaiman حبل من مسد يعني سلسلة من حديد. As far as Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, he said, حبل من مسد, what is meant by that is a chain of iron. They say, عن سفيان الثوري من طريق مهران أو مهران في جيدها حبل من مسد قال حبل في عنقها من نار مثل الطوق طولها 70 ذراعا. Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah ta'ala, and this is unique. You see them now going all the way down to the Atba' al-Tabi'een, from the later of them, or the middle of them, like Sufyan al-Thawri. Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, as is mentioned by the pathway of Mihran on him, regarding the statement, fi jidiha hablun min masad, he said it will be a rope around her neck made of the fire, of the hellfire, similar to the tuq, or the toque, that what do they call those things? The shackle that is placed around the neck, right? If you think about how slaves, they used to have that collar that they would place around their neck that they could tie the chain into to, manipulate them. So Sufyan al-Thawri, he's saying that she will have a rope around her neck made of the fire, or a chain around her neck made of the fire, similar to those fetters or those binds or those collars that they used to wear. Its length will be 70 dhira. Its length will be 70 cubits. The chain that is attached to it will be 70 cubits. The last narration they mention, they say, and Abdul Rahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam min Tariq ibn Wahab fi qawlihi hablun min masad قال حبل من شجر تنبت في اليمن لها مسد وكانت تفتل وقال حبل من مسد حبل من نار في رقبتها. On the authority of Abdul Rahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam, from the pathway of Ibn Wahab, he said regarding the statement of Allah, حبل من مسد, he said it is a type of rope from a plant that grows in Yemen. It is known as mesed, and it is something that they used to bind together to make rope. He said, and it is also said, hablun min masad is a rope made of the hellfire that will be wrapped around her neck. Now, so those are the different tafsirs that they mention of this. They mention in the footnotes, and if you notice that in the footnotes, usually they just mention, which of these various tafsirs they might think is the strongest one. And so they say, اختلف أو اختلف في معنى حبل من مسد في هذه الآية على أقوال. The scholars, they differ about the meaning of this ayat. في جيدها حبل من مسد. They disagree about the meaning of حبل من مسد, and so they have numerous statements. الأول حبال من الشجر تكون بمكة. The first of them is that it is a rope of a tree that grows in Mecca. Right? And we also mentioned the last statement where it said that it grows in Yemen. I said that addition. They say, secondly, al-Masad, a leaf. The second of them is that the Masad is those fibers of those trees that they used, that they could bind together to make rope. The third of them is that al-Masad is a iron, al-Hadid, alladhi yakunu fil baqarah. Is the iron that is used for the well's bucket, for the buckets that are used in the well. And الرابع هو قلادة من ودع في عنقها. The fourth of them is that it was a necklace of shells that she used to wear around her neck. Right? And so whether you're saying it was in the dunya, it was the rope that she used to use to bind her wood together where she would carry it around her neck, or if you say it was in the dunya, the seashells that she used to wear, that necklace that she had that was very valuable, or if you say that it was in the hereafter, a rope that will be made in the hereafter that resembles in name and concept the ropes that were known as Masad in Mecca and Yemen, or if you say instead of it being that, it will be made out of iron or out of the hellfire, right? These are the different tafsirs that they mention for the meaning of Masad. Then they talk about what some of the scholars said were the stronger opinions. So they said, وَعَلَّقَ بْنُ عَطِيَّةَ على القول الرابع بقوله فإنما عبر عن قلادتها بحبل من مسد على جهة التفاؤل لها وذكر تبرجها في هذا السعي الخبيث. Allahu Akbar. This is a beautiful statement. Right? She had this necklace that was valuable and expensive. And so if we say that this is what is being referred to in the ayah, Ibn Atiyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that, commenting on this tafsir, this fourth aspect of the tafsir, that it's the necklace she used to wear, he says Allah expressed or commented or communicated her chain, her necklace, expressing it as a rope of Masad. Right? And so, first of all, I get from that that it's like disgracing it. Like this is something that you think was valuable and precious and important. It's a rope of Masad. So it's as Allah is criticizing her in that regard off the rip. And then Ibn Atiyah, he says, so Allah refers to her necklace as a rope of Masad in a way of like tafa'ul, like in an ominous way, right? And in an ominous way, as a way of taking an omen out of it, right? And in an ominous way, a foreshadowing way, right? Talking about what it's going to end up as. And he is mentioning it as a way of criticizing her and how she would show off and expose herself in order to accomplish these wicked desires of her. So she has this necklace that she thinks is priceless and valuable, and you can see it and it looks nice. And her desire was to use it to establish hatred and enmity against the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah is expressing about that necklace that it's not nice. It's a hablun min masad, right? It's a rope and not only downplaying its value in itself, but in an ominous way of telling her what the result of that necklace is going to have her end up with in the hellfire. And the reason for that is her effort and her desire that she wanted to accomplish with that necklace. And so how she would show off with the necklace, Allah debased her with the necklace. And how she wanted to use the necklace to show enmity to the Prophet, Allah will punish her with the necklace. And so that's a very beautiful comparison of like the greatness of Allah's expression in bringing that together, right? She had a necklace that she thought was valuable, that she used to show off. And so how did Allah refer to it? As something that was invaluable and disgraceful and disrespectful. And then in an ominous way, telling her what it was going to end up as. So the same way that she wanted to use it so that it could be a cause of grief and annoyance of the messenger, Allah will make the necklace be the cause and the grief of annoyance for her in the hereafter. That is the statement of Ibn Atiyah. They say, وَرَجَّهَ ابن جرير مستندا إلى اللغة أنه حبل جمع من أنواع مختلفة. Subhanallah. They say in Ibn Jarir, he says that based on the language, commenting on this meaning of hablun min masad, he says that it is a rope that has gathered all of these different types of threads. So it's a rope that is made of iron. One of the threads is of iron. One of the threads is of the hellfire directly. One of the threads is of this rope from these fibers. One of the threads is of this wooden substance, right? So you have all of these different materials, and all of them, right, are a punishment in and of themselves. How the fire burns, how the iron brands, how the wood scratches, how the fibers itch. Like, subhanallah. Subhanallah. Like, think about that. That's something that you might have never even thought about. Imagine itching in the hellfire. Right? Burning is an imagination, a sensation you can barely imagine. Right? Weight, the hardness, this right? The uncomfortableness of it. But on top of that, it's itching. Wallahi, Allah is shadeed in his punishment. Like, if you ever experienced an itch that you can't get rid of, wallahi, Allah is shadeed in his punishment. Right? Even just that portion of it, the detail of it. So this is the statement of Ibn Jarir. It is a rope that is gathered from all of these fibers. He says, and for this reason, the people of interpreting the Quran disagreed about its interpretation in the ways that we've mentioned. Ibn Jarir, he says, وَمِمَّا يَدُلُّ عَلَى صِحَّةِ مَا قُلْنَا فِي ذَلِكَ قَوْلُ الزَّاجِرِ. And from the things that prove the validity of what we're saying, that it's a rope made up of all these different materials, how the rope is bound using all of these different materials. He says it's the statement of the poem or the poet who said in a zajr way, وَمَسَدِ أُمِرَّ مِنْ أَيَانِقِ صُهْبٍ عِتَاقٍ ذَاتِ مُخٍّ زَاهِقِ. وَمَسَدٍ أُمِرَّ مِنْ أَيَانِقِ صُهْبٍ وَمَسَدٍ أُمِرَّ مِنْ أَيَانِقِ صُهْبٍ عِتَاقِ ذَاتِ مُخٍّ زَاهِقِ. وَمَسَدٍ أُمِرَّ مِنْ أَيَانِقِ صُهْبٍ عِتَاقٍ ذَاتِ مُخٍّ زَاهِقِ. Right, he says in a masad, umirra, that has been pulled together, min ayaniqi, from ayaniq. And so we need to find out what substance is ayaniq. Ayaniq is obviously a substance, because the point of this poem is a rope that has been pulled together from ayaniq of suhub, as well as itaq, that has mukh, that is zahiq. So it has a lot of words in here that are unclear to me. And the good news is that this poem is mentioned by a lot of people. وكذلك النسب, he says عثمان blah 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 وفيما يأتي قريب صواب عمارة بن طارق وكذلك ولعمار مسد أمر من أيانق لسن بأنياب ولا حقائق ولا ضعاف مخهن زاهق. So zahaqa, to destroy, mukhin zahiqi. Mukh is the fibers. I'm not going to go and try to do the explanation of this poem right now. I'll do that on my own time. But the line of poetry, once again, and different people say it different ways. وَمَسَدٍ أُمِرَّ مِنْ أَيَانِقِ صُهْبٍ عِتَاقٍ ذَاتِ مُخٍ زَاهِقِ. Now, but the point is that this poet, he said that this message was pulled together from all of these different substances. So this is the way that Ibn Jarir is proving that the message rope that she will have in the Jahannam will be made of all of these different types of materials. He says, and they actually explain it, Ibn Jarir, he explains it some. He says, فَجَعَلَ إِمْرَارُهُ مِنْ شَتَّى. So he made the pulling of the rope, right? The fettering or the twining of the rope from all types of different materials. He says, وَكَذَلِكَ الْمَسَدْ الَّذِي فِي جِيدِ امْرَأَةِ أَبِي لَهَبٍ أُمِرَّ مِنْ أَشْيَاءٍ شَتَّى. He says, and so likewise the message that will be around the neck of the woman of Abi Lahab, it will be twined together from all different types of materials, of leaf, right? That fiber and iron and those fibers of the trees, and it will be placed around her neck as a fetter or a shackle, just like the necklace that she used to wear of seashells. And from this is the statement of Al-A'sha, who was a different poet. He said, "Tumsi fa yasrufu babuha min duniha ghalaqan sarifa mahalat al-amsadi." Right? Tumsi, she goes into the evening, fa yasrifu babuha min duniha. And so he places her door in front of her. I mean, and so she goes in the evening, and he closes the door between her and us, basically, and locks it to turn and غلقا صريفا محالة الأمساد, right? غلقا, and he locks it, turning us away, making it impossible to break the amsad, right? Making it impossible to break those ropes that he used to chain it with. It's just another line of poetry. It can be translated better. But tumsi fa yasrifu babuha min dunina ghalaqan sarifa mahalat al-amsadi. She goes in and he closes her door between her and us and locks it with those ropes that deter anybody because they're impossible. Those impossible to break, amsad. I.e. bil amsad is the plural of vested, i.e. those ropes. Anyway, so this is the tafsir, and that statement of Ibn Jarir is probably a nice one to build off of in the understanding of this tafsir, that the rope that she'll have around her neck will be made of all of these different materials, twined and bound together to make this rope, and each one of them emphasizing in greatening her punishment, the same way she used to take pride in this necklace that she wore in the dunya and how she wanted to use it against the messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We'll stop at that amount. There's still a little bit more left in this surah. They're going to mention the different narrations that are relevant to this tafsir, and like that we'll finish next time and finish this surah out. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسوله ونبيه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.